When you're watching a movie or TV show, what is usually the plotline that you see? A heroic protagonist that is given a challenge as we watch them progress in their mission and succeed? A happily ever after? This seems to be the most common cliché in films. We all know the hero's journey like Harry Potter, The Matrix, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and most superhero movies, where a protagonist is given a challenge, pursues the challenge, runs into a pure low point or abyss, transforms, atones, and eventually wins the day. Good guy wins, bad guy loses. But what's wrong with that? It seems kind of disappointing to leave a theater being sad or disappointed. A good ending leaves the audience in a cheerful and satisfying mood. There is nothing better than that feeling. But filmmakers believe that viewers were ready for something different when watching something, and I'm sure some viewers are ready as well. Some filmmakers began to think of new plotlines that would challenge the typical development of a character, specifically how a protagonist or hero might act differently than most movies. So they thought, what if we had a hero, but he wasn't a hero? A hero that acts as a villain? The anti-hero. Seems oxymoronic and counterintuitive, but that's just the kind of creativity films allow. So, what does the anti-hero really even mean? It's typically a protagonist who would sometimes not display typical heroic attributes such as courage or morality. They may have more sinister qualities that make them seem more evil than a hero. So while they may be the main character, they may not be an ideal hero. And it's not even selective to only movies. The concept of the anti-hero dates back all the way to ancient Greece and Rome. Throughout time, anti-heroes have popped up as well, such as in the literary classic Don Quixote, and then later in the existentialist era of Sartre and Camus. The anti-hero began to really take its shape in film, with the arrival of westerns in the 1950s and 60s. The most famous example would be Clint Eastwood's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in the Dollars trilogy. So the concept of the anti-hero was surely defined in art, but not used widely. But more recently, in the past 20 years, the use of the anti-hero has been accelerating, and is and has been used in Emmy-winning movies and TV shows, such as The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, House of Cards, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, John Wick, The Wolf of Wall Street, and plenty of others. So why is it so popular and prevalent today? I think people are just ready for new things when it comes to film and TV. We're all too used to the typical hero's journey, as it has now become predictable. Anti-hero stories offer something new. They resonate tension, heartbreak, uncertainty, surprise, which just makes the viewing experience so much more captivating. But specifically, what makes these works so good? How are these anti-heroes able to be so successful? I'm going to dive deeper into 3 specific works to explain. 1. Tony Soprano in The Sopranos. 2. Walter White in Breaking Bad. And 3. Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street. I will be analyzing their hero and villain attributes within their character development and how it affects the plot of the film. And obviously, I will be going into depth into these works, so if you haven't seen them, use the timestamps in the description to skip a certain part of the video, or you might just want to skip this one. Let's find out about the anti-hero. The Sopranos is widely known and accepted as one of the greatest TV shows of all time. Debuting in 1999 on HBO, it was an instant success as the story follows Anthony Soprano, or Tony, an Italian-American mob boss and captain in the New York and New Jersey area. Played by the late James Gandolfini, Tony leads the plot as he tries to lead a modernized Italian mafia while also being a husband and a father of 2. And that is the main conflict within the show. Tony's 2 worlds of running a mob and a family are overwhelming to him as he begins to have panic attacks, which leads him to see a psychiatrist. Not only is this a conflict to Tony, but also to viewers watching the show. We recognize Tony Soprano as our protagonist, meaning our initial thought process is to be on his side. Then, we start to see the things that he does. He cheats on his wife, Carmela, multiple times, verbally and physically abuses enemies and friends, drinks heavily, has big anger issues, and most importantly, kills many people. And here's where we see our preliminary traits of an anti-hero: lack of morals and remorse. Our typical hero in a movie never does anything that is seen as malicious to us, or they defend against people who have malicious intent, like in most superhero movies. However, we all know that it is impossible to be perfect in others' eyes. Tony Soprano does not live in a world of a typical hero or superhero. His world is full of conflict and anxiety, which makes it impossible for him to be fair or nice. What makes this show so intriguing is how he expresses his emotions to his psychiatrist, Dr. Melfi. Tony is seen as an alpha male, a leader full of machismo to both his friends in the mob and his family, and going to a psychiatrist makes him worry that weakness will begin to cloud him. So in order to maintain his strength, he does not play Mr. Nice Guy. He doubles down on his intimidation and alpha male mentality, which just makes cheering for him even harder. He has pain within himself, and instead of taking it in, he spreads his pain and anger to his family and friends. So why should we cheer for a debaucherous murderer? Why do we defend Tony and remain on his side? I believe it's because we see the hero in him, and we see past why he partakes in villainism. We want to cheer for him because we know it's possible for him to get what he truly wants and be happy. That's what we always want to see in a person we care about. To see them prosper and be satisfied with life. It's heartbreaking to see Tony in his many low points throughout the show, like separation from his wife, watching his friends and loved ones die, betrayal from his own family, disconnection from his own kids, and even getting shot. We also see the light in him as he protects and cherishes his family, and always protects and loves his friends. We recognize the pain within him, and we are well aware of what his life is like without all the trouble. We get to see this with his occasional dream sequences he has, which were confusing, but clearly existential. Feelings and mentality is a huge theme these writers put into a show. Usually in mob movies like The Godfather, Goodfellas, Scarface, or Casino, we see the main characters do things Tony does like fight, kill, smoke, drink, and use drugs, but we don't get to see their emotions for doing those things in depth. They seem to be represented as just cold gangsters living life as they please, but Tony Soprano's character lets us see the human aspect to his extreme life. The writers are emphasizing reality, for Tony's chosen life has its perks and its consequences. But don't take my word for it. You should watch The Sopranos for yourself and form your own opinion whether Tony really is a good person. His love for his family and friends may win our hearts, but his dangerous life in the mob shows us he is the ideal anti-hero. In the year 2008, another TV show out of the AMC channel started to gain serious notoriety for being so addictive and awesome. That show is Breaking Bad. Created by Vince Gilligan, Breaking Bad is in no doubt to be one of the greatest shows of all time, as they have also racked up Sopranos-level awards. Leading the show is the well-known Bryan Cranston, who plays Walter White, a middle-aged high school chemistry teacher who has just been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Aware of his impending death, he realizes he needs to leave his family a lot of money to pay for his wife and kids' future, especially with a newborn on the way. However, with the salary of a high school teacher, Walter knows this is hardly enough money to keep them satisfied without him, so he needs to find another way. After a drug bust done by Hank Schrader, his DEA agent brother-in-law, Walter sees how much money street methamphetamine is worth. And after seeing one of his former students escape the drug bust, Walter sees an opportunity. He partners with his former student, Jesse, who is played by Aaron Paul, to make and sell meth. A lot to take in just the first episode. They start off on a small scale, but see how good the meth really is. Walter's chemical intellect helps him make the purest meth known, which he sees as an opportunity to expand and gain leverage over rivals. Walter and Jesse gain more and more ground and power in the business, but each step they take to gain power comes at a price. They are both forced to fight, lie, intimidate, and even kill in order to maintain their power and cash flow. As the show progresses, viewers start to see the physical, mental, and emotional toll the business is taking on them, and how it's changing their character. Walter seems to be the most affected by change due to his role. His desperation to get enough money for his family drives his motivation, but the power he has over this secret formula seems to get to his head. Even though he's clearly on pace to get enough money for his family, he wants more, and he has to keep lying to his family and play with fire by lying to his brother-in-law in the DEA. He becomes more powerful as he begins to work for even more powerful people, but more money, more problems. With more conflicts, Walter deals with his problems by dragging Jesse and even his family deeper into the rabbit hole. He lets Skylar, his wife, into his scheme as she leads his money laundering, and he has Jesse do things he will never forget. Walter accumulates his wealth and power so high that he lets dangerous people be a part of his business, which leads to the capture and torture of Jesse and the eventual demise of Hank, his DEA agent brother. Exodus arrives at Walter as he tries to help his family escape, but they cannot accept the wrongdoings Walter has caused, leaving Walter to exile and die alone. After, of course, he totally destroys that white supremacist gang and frees Jesse. That was awesome. Seems quite a heroic end, but at what price? Not only was his death a cost, but the biggest cost was how he negatively affected people around him. First, he took in Jesse as Walter knew he could distribute his product, but Walter's power and ego eventually led him to force Jesse to be in terrifying situations, like making him kill. Walter also caused Jesse to be captured and tortured, where he was also traumatized as his captors killed people he deeply cared about. Walter and Jesse did have a good thing going with their business, but Walter's lack of care for Jesse led Jesse to despise Walter and celebrate when he was freed, and when Walter was dead. He also lacked care for Skylar and Hank, putting them in dangerous situations as well, as Walter's business decisions ultimately led to Hank's death and his family leaving him, as they believe Walter will do more harm to them. So, if Walter is such a terrible and selfish person in the show, why do we care about him? It's the same reason why people like Tony Soprano, because we see the light and good of his character. We're reminded of Walter's main and initial goal, to leave his family enough resources to thrive when he inevitably dies. We see that he cares about his family so much that he will go to extreme lengths, such as killing people, in order to secure a future for them, which can be easily paralleled to what Tony Soprano does. Viewers tend to ignore the evils the character expresses because they know that they have good intentions within them. Though they might condemn the malicious actions these characters take, they still want to side with their hero, for they are not true villains. If Walter White is not a prime example of what an anti-hero is, I do not know what is. My last example surely emphasizes a different kind of anti-hero, as I examine the character of Jordan Belfort, played by Leonardo DiCaprio in Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street. Based on a real person, Jordan Belfort is a big-time stockbroker who is ridiculously rich and regularly partakes in an advanced amount of drugs, sex, partying, and spending. But he wasn't initially this crazy guy we see throughout the movie. In the beginning, we see Jordan as a subtle, married, middle-class guy who's looking for work at an investing company. Viewers can easily see him as a normal guy, as he is yet to partake in any debauchery, which indicates innocence. But when Jordan meets with his boss, played by Matthew McConaughey, he sees that a sober and boring lifestyle is impossible in succeeding in that business. Jordan eventually leaves since the firm closed down, but then is employed at a much smaller firm, where he is able to express his brokering talents by selling penny stocks. His wealth begins to accumulate as he sways investors to buy shares in companies that are hardly known and are very speculative. With enough capital, Jordan starts his own firm called Stratton Oakmont, where he recruits other brokers to use the same strategy Belfort used to make a ridiculous amount of profit. Jordan's company rapidly accelerates as he becomes a tycoon within the investing realm of business. Now a huge company, he begins to lavish on spending to go crazy and party, while still packing on profit for his company. He cheats on his wife and marries a new woman, uses a copious amount of drugs, and spends millions on yachts, real estate, cars, and many others. But wait, how could an investing firm make so much money in such a short amount of time? Belfort used a pump-and-up scheme where they inflated the price of a stock through misleading statements in order to sell at a ridiculously high price. When they sell, they essentially con the people who bought the stocks, as the value of that stock would plummet, making the buyer's investment worthless. After all the insanity Jordan experiences with his wealth, the FBI catches up to him and arrests Jordan Belfort for securities fraud and money laundering, which also ends Stratton Oakmont. So hold up, is this character really supposed to be our hero? It's weird to think of Jordan Belfort as our hero for this movie, but the concept of an anti-hero does not have to be strictly selective to what we see as a typical hero. Jordan is clearly our protagonist, but he surely is not a villain. To describe what type of anti-hero he is, we can relate his character somewhat to Tony Soprano. Both Jordan and Tony seem to lack morals, ideals, and remorse, as they both run illegal businesses, cheat, and use drugs. However, Tony is definitely more villainistic, as he physically harms people and even kills people, without much hesitation. Jordan is not hardcore like Tony and Walter White. So is he even an anti-hero? Jordan really is an interesting character, as we might call him a white-collar anti-hero. His role as an anti-hero is a roller coaster ride, as he starts out as a normal guy, then becomes insane, and then eventually slows down again. After Jordan Belfort was released from jail, he sobered up and began to teach and write about sales techniques, which he still does to this day. What really separates Jordan from Tony and Walter is that he is able to take away the maliciousness from his character. Jordan frauded, cheated, and caused harm to people, but Jordan is the only character out of these three we get to see repent their actions. Due to the controversial ending of The Sopranos, we're not able to see the future of Tony Soprano, and Walter White dies without making a real change. Jordan's ability to repent his actions showed that anti-heroes and even villains do have the chance to make amends and be relatively good, but it really depends on the life you pick. Tony was living in a world where death could strike him at any second, and Walter lived in a world where he knew he was going to die soon. Jordan does not have to worry about death, and has plenty of time to be regretful. I've repeated traits of anti-heroes throughout this, and lack of remorse is apparent in most cases. When you're able to change the traits of your own character and be aware of your actions, that's what separates the anti-heroes from heroes. Jordan Belfort surely is an anti-hero throughout his crazy business life, but learns to regret his actions and repent, showing viewers that he can be accepted as our hero. It's not up to us, but to the character. When we read a novel or a TV show, who doesn't love to cheer for a character throughout, hoping they win the day and have a happy life and ending? It's what makes us feel happy and satisfied as we close the book or leave the theater. But writers, producers, and directors see a new direction that may make a work special and unique. They realize that the typical hero's journey and good ending may just be a cliche and eventually boring. So in order to intrigue the audience, they conflict the audience. They invent Tony Soprano, a loving father and friend who kills and hurts people. They invent Walter White, also a loving father who makes meth for money and also kills people. They also depict real people, like Jordan Belfort, a drug-addicted stockbroker who cheats people. The audience clearly recognizes the protagonist, but sees a villain within the hero, an anti-hero. Characters become more interesting as viewers are always left surprised, contemplating if their hero will keep being malicious or find a heroic path. This is why these movies and TV shows have won so many awards and become so popular, because they are unique when making their characters and plots. Anti-heroes are in no way predictable. Will they be good or bad in this episode? We just don't know. The anti-hero is not going anywhere, as Tony Soprano's, Walter White's, and Jordan Belfort's will surely appear in many other works to come. Be ready for anything when they do.